Hi, I made a real nice video very carefully that I had been meaning to make for so long of how to load a palette, and then it didn't save. Or I was editing it and I lost it. I don't remember which, but it's gone. So now I went ahead and did our first lesson with tube watercolors with the children, and it went swimmingly well. Okay. Number one was a matter of getting our right materials. I found these brushes, which are a synthetic hair makeup brush at the 99-cent store, no, at Big Lots, on sale for $1, and they just soak up water like you wouldn't believe. They're a great wash brush to get kids used to, how much water there actually is that you've got to be moving around on the paper. And we're going to be testing out different kinds of paper next. But anyway, this guy's our super sopper. And what I introduced was a nice set of Artist's Loft watercolors, 24 pieces. 6 or so of them are, fancy colors. But after 4th of July, I think I might even have found a way to try using them. The colors in here are excellent. The names of them. Oh, I can't get this up close enough, I don't think. There. We don't use white in transparent watercolor, and these are transparent watercolors. So we got lemon yellow, yellow ochre, orange yellow, vermilion, carmine red, scarlet, light green, sap green, viridian, cerulean blue, Prussian blue, ultramarine blue, violet, burnt sienna, burnt umber. Okay, and those are all really good serviceable names. And then you notice there are some others in here, some metallic, and that's not too bad, some metallics. I was thinking they were the ones with mica in them. Those are nice too, but they have to go on top of other things. That's just beside the point. The point I want to make is using pan watercolors has caused us all to have kind of a strange relationship with watercolors and has made them much, I don't know, just made them more difficult. These little boxes like this, even smaller, are not really, this could be a studio watercolor one. This is old Pentel watercolors, and I was hoping to find some, and actually what turned up were these fine little things, watercolors in tubes. When you have watercolors in tubes, you notice these pans, they're shallow at this end and deeper at this end. Okay, these are mixing trays, and so are these. You don't squeeze all of your paint at once into there to use when you're working in the studio, and I'm going to call this a studio one because it's got these nice slants. And if you put pigment from the tube on, you put it up here at the top end and let it dry so it can run down into here and mix with water and become watercolor. So these aren't paints, and this isn't paint. But if you mix them not mix them together, but if you carefully add this to water that you have in here, or you have the paint, you have the pigment up here, and you have water down here, and you slowly touch, and get the paint make a paint by having the color run down into the water, not by putting a bunch of pigment down there and putting water on top of it and mixing it all together. It's not that kind of a paint. It's watercolor. You can actually put water down on your paper and just put a dot of color, little tiny dot of color into it, and move that around. So what we get in school then are these pans that are all filled up, and then we're supposed to mix in the lid. And those little pans are fine if you're working with a very, very small little brush in the field with a pocket-sized palette. This is much bigger than a pocket-sized one, and it's a small one. I think I've shown this before. This is my own palette. And as you can see, there are lots of colors mixed on it in process. Everything is dry. The color, the pigment goes up on the edge of everything. And then when I work on it, I get water and I put it in here. I stroke it up onto there and it goes down into there and it becomes watercolor. Okay, that's true everywhere. These pans, these are solid, so I use these for mixing. These pans are deeper here and shallower here, so I put spare colors, extra colors up in these that I don't use that often. And then all of these are where I put my actual colors that I love to use and need the most. And I put the color up on the edge, and then when I'm working, I just come through, put some water down here, dribble it up on there, let it soak a little bit, and then in a little while, stroke the color down into the water, and I've got it. This one here was in too wet, so now I'm just very careful with it, trying to use up what's in the bottom and not touch the top. This stuff is up in the top. This is down in here. It's just dried. It was the watercolor mixed. The advantage of having watercolors is you don't have to wash your whole palette out every time. You can let it dry and go back to it, put water in this, and you got watercolor again, because here's your color and the water has evaporated. But then this is your, really your prepared color ready to go. So again, see how bright this is. And you just put water on there and stroke it down. So that's what these are doing, and it can help us all get away from having the little pans full of paint and digging around in it like it's tempera paint, because it isn't. So here's just very simply how to load a palette. I'm loading these for the kids. They did a great job last week using their palettes and doing working with primaries and getting the basics of color mixing down. And that's something that people are kind of getting away from, because you can buy a set of 180 different colors and have your pick and go, ooh, these two look good together, and so on. But this is the mechanics of all of it. So we started with red, yellow, and blue. They did such a great job at mixing their color wheels of the secondaries. I'm going to put the secondaries right in here. What I'm going to put in, along with that red, which is a dark red, a rouge crimson, I'm going to put this scarlet in. This is more of an orangey red. Then, well, right there. Then I also have a yellow ochre, just to try, so I'm going to put that there, I think. And then I also have a nice viridian. It's always good to have a green, so I guess I'll put that there. Now I have another blue. I have a cerulean that I want to put in. So I think maybe, no, I'm going to put the cerulean here. And now we have these from last week. The primary colors. And now we have here some of the secondary colors. We don't have an orange in here. We could add it in, but I'm going to put those. And then they can also experiment with mixing, what happens if you use this one with a blue to make a purple. It's going to make kind of an icky purple because this is an orangey one. But just to know that there are 2 blues, 2 reds, actually 2 greens, 2 yellows to use. Besides some of them being tertiary colors. Oh my goodness, I've gone 10 minutes already. So what I'm going to do right now, before I go any farther, is load up these palettes. I didn't show you this. I'm not looking into the camera now. I'm down closer to the stuff. So, I'm going to load in this nice little scarlet. And now I'm going to squeeze the whole tube out. There's no need to. I'm going to put it up here and let it dry. Some of it's going to run down into there. I'm going to load all 3 up. And these dry pretty fast, so let them dry overnight so that we can stroke the water up into the color. Okay, so I have filled more than enough color for, a session tomorrow already, and this tube is still pretty full. So, okay, then I'm going to put in some, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. All right. This is really for wiping my brush off on, but I can, in an emergency, use it to clear a palette well. This is my own. Okay, so something's stuck on the back. Okay. Oh, it's just crooked. Okay, so I'm going to put this here. Yellow ochre. Oh, it's good and stiff. It's a good earth color. I hope you can see this nicely. Okay, there are those. I'm going to add in a little of this. Now, there's a lot of this yellow gone because in mixing orange, you don't add yellow to the red. Once you do, you're in trouble, and then you just keep adding more and more yellow until you discover it doesn't work. So this is the second fill on 3 palettes, and this thing is more than half gone, and there's only 1 yellow in this set, so I would recommend the set of 36. I don't usually recommend a big set like that because you get into all these crazy colors, but there aren't any crazy colors in it. They're all serviceable and good. All right, our next one is this blue here. Let's see, I guess I got these mixed up a little. Yeah. That's not smart. But that's where it was before, so I'm going to leave it. Okay. See, now there's some dry stuff down here. I'm just going to scoop it up. Put it underneath the fresh stuff. the cerulean. Which really should go between the yellow and the blue to match with the spectrum, but there it is. And I'll do mine later. Okay, and a little bit of green. And I'm just gonna stick it up in there because that's gonna become a big puddle anyway. Not too much of it. All right. Now, tomorrow what we're gonna do I have an actual orange? I do. I think I'm gonna have them test out let's see, do I have a violet here? I have a violet and a green and an orange. My idea is to test a plaid. So last week, okay, this is how these are on one paper. Not a whole lot of water in them, but how they are on the Crayola paper. We did some testing of paper, as well as brushstroke, a solid brushstroke across. Here, one brushstroke circles. Here, just how much color is in that brush. Don't dip it back in, it's still going strong. We did our American flags last week. Again, we counted them. Good solid flags, concept of negative space. And then here we have the right number of things that represent stars. It's okay, just make a square and you can use a watercolor pencil to make it into a star if you want to go that far. It's another one. Then what we did was, with the strip of 3, we put 3 in the same order over them. Then what we're going to do also, because they notice these nice things happening in here, is get the viewfinders and check the color, what the color makes, simply by overlaying, not just mixing. So I'd like to do that with our whole complement of colors. All right, these are the brushes that we wound up using last week, and they worked very, very well. They're good and springy, and the kids responded to them very well, as we started out with the Super Soaker. And then these gave us more control over those. So now this week, when I have them wet their colors down, I'm going to have them do it like this. Instead of taking our Super Soaker and throwing water in, and that's what I do to my dry palette. Every time I'm sitting down to work, I give them a little soak. I'm going to do it with a smaller brush. And, I'm going to drip the water in just like I did before. And I'm going to put it down in the well. It's only water. There's the color. Okay, that one's a dry one, and it should be up on the side, and I'm going to put it up there. Okay, now this mixes up very easily because it's already been mixed up with water once, and it dried. But this here is still the solid pigment, so we need to let the water sit on it a little to soften it up before we mix it into any kind of a color that actually is dark enough. See? Well, that's not too bad already, but it's not quite dark enough. So we're going to work on darkening those pigments. Another thing is try to wipe our brush off before rinsing it. And leave that, and then we always have a nice little paint rag just for wiping up a little extra paint. But we don't want this thing soaked and sitting here every time. It's just for doing this. Okay, that's that. I'm going to stop there. The next thing I want to do is do some layers. While I'm talking about layers, let me show these. This is a great example. I was wondering what I could do with these, and I figured out what. These are out of salonpas. I've been using a lot of them. I've wrecked the base of my thumb holding my phone too much. So I'm not using my left hand for a while. So I'm getting off the floor one hand, but all right. So these guys are like tissue paper. And we moved to tissue paper after trying overlays before of watercolor and didn't work. It was just wet, 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 and the whole thing turned out soaked. So we moved to tissue paper layers, and here's what works. I think it's up to the sun. You see it's very light. When you add a layer to it, it's not darker, it's just more intense. And when you add another layer, you see you have 3, not really shades, intensities of the same color. We could say it's darker because there's less light. Okay, but this is how watercolors work. You work wet over dry. If you work wet over wet, they just keep mixing together. And this is something we tested with these. These are very good student watercolors for a very good price. You notice when we go over this with wet, there's no mixing together. This doesn't bleed. It's there. That's that. It's pigment in the paper, and even the yellow is not lifting. We're putting a straight color over it. You see any bleed down here? None. So when it's dry, you can go right over it. Get all kinds of interesting effects as well. Look at this. That was like a bad load. This is mine. But anyway, we're learning really well how to work with watercolors, and I'm super excited about that. Please give me a thumbs up. Give me a comment. Ask me a question. I don't see my comments or questions unless I'm using my phone or on my computer. I'm usually watching, I watch these on Xbox and, streaming through Xbox on my TV, on a big TV. And most of my videos are made actually not for sitting with your hand on your chin looking at your computer or holding and to watch on your phone, but actually lying down and watching it on television. So, this is step 1 in watercolor, and it's really important. And I can't tell you how very excited I am about these kids learning it. I see something right here. Here's the new red that we put in, the orangey red. You see the color is on its own. It's volunteering to come down in there. And I'm going to stroke it up. I'm not going to touch the top of it. I'm just going to go from the bottom and bring it out. Ooh, it gets a lot more intense. Number one, it's fresh and out of the tube, but for kids, the whole thing winds up in the paint, and you've defeated the purpose of using these. So we're working on getting very good watercolor habits from the start. All right, let's see what this one happens to look like. Oops. All right. This is not recommended technique. This is chicken scratching, form of chicken scratching. We used this size brush for the stripes on the flag to practice with a smaller brush and get an even stroke, and it was really good for that because that was just enough. But I've got some brushes on order that are larger, but not this large, to keep from doing the chicken scratching. And the chicken scratching, again, comes from these small watercolor boxes that are meant for working in the field. You're working on a little 3x5 card about this big, where you got a little box that's that big that fits in your pocket, and you got a little bitty brush that's much, much, much smaller than any of these. Just a little bitty brush, you know, painting away. But you know, when you're painting with just your hand on a small area, it looks a little better. But that's not a good practice for like regular watercolor. You want to be free and moving your arm around. And so here is how you can do that. And I'm just so happy to be bringing what I know to people on this. I can't tell you how happy I am. So I'm going to sit around and watch this paint dry. Take care. I'm back. Cut these little doily things, right? They're just the right size. Cut a bunch of them, or several of them, and then use them for stencils. This is another concept we've been working on, stencils. I'm going to put them all over some kind of a something that comes out of things getting mixed together. We use them as stencils, and we can try some of those metallic paints to make fireworks. Isn't that a great idea? And a use of metallic paints. I thought I'd never find one. Okay. So excited.